Episode 164. I believe achieving success in the outdoor biz is dependent upon embracing the outdoor lifestyle and learning from outdoor leaders that came before you. If you agree, then listen up for tips, advice, and hacks about growing or starting your career in the outdoor biz. My name is Rick Sayes. Welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Len Necefer talks about public lands, Colorado-based outdoor apparel company Natives Outdoors, and more. First, if you're thinking about starting your own podcast for your brand or passion project, I've created a free cheat sheet outlining 10 fundamental steps to create and launch your podcast. It has everything you need to know about planning, creating, and launching. Head over to ricksayes.com and download this free resource today. On this episode, Len Necefer and I talk about the constant challenge of protecting public lands and the great work he and Natives Outdoor are doing. Enjoy. Hey, Len, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, glad to be catching up with you. This is going to be fun. Where in the world are you today? Where do we find you?
I am in Tucson right now.
Okay.
It's actually not 1,000,000 degrees. We had a cold front come through, and I think it hit Colorado with 20 inches of snow. So
Yeah, we got rain and snow in our mountains last night here in Bishop. So yeah.
Oh, right on. Yeah, which is not a bad thing. Yeah, it's finally out of a drought.
Exactly. Well, we're never out of a drought, but it's finally, yeah, we finally have water. It's not as dire.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
put
a
it
good way
that
to
way.
put it.
Yeah. Let's see. So let's start with your first exposure to the outdoors. How did you get excited about the outdoors?
A few different ways. My mom's side of the family's from the Navajo Nation, and so my grandparents and aunts and uncles had what we called a summer and a winter camp, but basically they were places that they would move the sheep between during different seasons. So the summer camp was up in the mountains, where it was I would say about 9,000 feet, a lot cooler, a lot more grass. So
Yeah.
and then moved down into the valleys in the winter time in the fall.
Yeah.
But we would often go in between those two places. So that was like in Northeastern Arizona in the Chisca Mountains.
Oh, beautiful. Nice.
Yeah, so really, really, really beautiful area. And my dad actually got me out a lot as well. I grew up a good chunk of my life in Lawrence, Kansas, and
Oh.
there's not much public land there, but
Right.
I remember going out to Clinton Lake, which is a big man-made reservoir, and there's a few trails and stuff around there. So I remember the first times getting out, like on the weekends, it would often be there.
Cool. Did you guys go fishing and stuff?
Yeah, I tried. I just didn't have the patience for it.
Yeah.
I was much more of the gotta go fast, gotta get my adrenaline system going. And
Got to do something. Yeah. Stay on the move. That's funny.
Right. Exactly.
And so you studied mechanical engineering in school. How'd you choose that major? How'd that come about?
There was a few things. I mean, I partly attribute it to playing with Legos as a kid.
Did you also, what was the other one with all the metal? Was it Erector set or something? Remember that?
Erector. Yeah, there's like Connects and then Erector set. Yeah. Yeah, so I definitely did all of that, and was really thankful for my parents to support me in that. And and so I did. It was around that, and then when I go out to my mom's family's place in Arizona, a lot of the work out there was very hands-on, and fixing fences and fixing trucks, and so I just had a kind of an inkling and an interest in doing that, and. But the other piece is that where my family grew, where my mom's side of the family's from, and where I ended up living near in the Four Corners area, we lived right in the shadow of two pretty big coal power plants, and so I grew up basically being able to taste the air in the middle of the winter because of the inversions.
Yeah.
And I remember that being like incredibly frustrating for me about like why would they put all of this stuff in our communities, and so I wanted to learn about energy and energy policy, and so my pathway into looking at how to hopefully institute more sustainable energy policy in my community was largely led me to look at mechanical engineering, and plus I love to work on cars.
Yeah, you had that aptitude, right?
Yeah, it was definitely kind of
Yeah, that's interesting. You talk about the air because I remember as a little kid, played all kinds of sports, and I'd come home from football practice, and my lungs would just hurt if I took a deep breath from all the smog back in the late '60s, early '70s in Southern California. It was just horrible.
Oh, right,
Yeah, just
right.
brutal. Yeah, and then you went on to get your PhD in engineering and public policy. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I graduated like right during the recession from undergrad.
Nice.
Um, so I had a few choices in front of me. One of them was going to grad school. Another was to work in a train depot in West Texas.
Hmm.
And then
What were you going to
another
do
one.
there?
I would have been basically like a foreman and
Oh
like
wow.
overseeing like mechanics, and
Okay.
it was kind of like an entry level mechanical engineering
Okay.
job.
Got
But it involved working third shift and like all of these uh, yeah, all of these things. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, and so I ended up deciding to go to grad school, and I chose the uh, engineering and public policy route in large part because it kind of fulfilled this goal of understanding how energy policy worked and how
hmm
environmental policy worked. And yeah, in the school I went to at Carnegie Mellon, it's the joke is about the department is that they beat the social science into the engineers. Uh, so we learned, kind of the complexities of policy, the
Right.
importance of social factors in that. Um, uh, and yeah, so my doctoral work looked at the intersection of cultural values and energy policy and how it
Mm.
applies to the Navajo Nation. And so, there's I basically you can look at there's different factors that basically influence how people's preferences on renewable energy or their
hmm
willingness to accept environmental risk. And one of those factors is cultural values. I like
Right.
to say that our body's the hardware and our culture is the software.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at how these particular cultural values could be potentially captured into some of these economic models that are
hmm
doing long range planning for energy resource planning. So it was good. It was great. I did a lot of field work and
Oh, cool.
talking to people, doing interviews, and
Yeah.
then I also did some of the behind the screen building the technical decision model, and
Wow.
then doing some survey work with it to see what it did for people's preferences.
And
So
it kind of circles back around to wanting to find out what they were doing to the air when you were a kid, right? I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, totally. And it was just kind of like, how do when we look at energy and environmental policies, it's not just the technical details that matter. It's like
Yeah.
societies, how people respond to the risks, like
hmm
the ways in what's acceptable. Like there's kind of these different nuances. And so I got to
hmm
take a deep dive into understanding like how people relate to the environment and how that
hmm
differs. And so that's led into a lot of the work I do today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I bet you got into a lot of psychology and sociology stuff about,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
man. Wow. Crazy. Interesting. And talk to us about Native Outdoors. That organization's come a long way in 2+ years, right? Fairly new.
Yeah, I guess 2 years and 2 months
Wow, cool.
effectively.
Congratulations.
Uh, Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, we started, we're a benefits corp based out of the state of Colorado. We do outdoor apparel. We do some media storytelling, and then we do also policy and consulting work.
Interesting.
Um, and so, in large part, the reason why we do those three things is that that we see them as a necessary the approach in which indigenous people can have a foothold and opportunity in the industry and begin
hmm
to have these broader conversations. So
And you guys are a B Corp, one of the few in the, I'm going to say, outdoor natural land space, right? I mean, I'm always kind of surprised at how many outdoor related companies, brands aren't B Corps yet.
right, and a large part of it is it's state level legislation that
Oh, interesting.
and so like we're still incorporated in the state of Colorado because the state of Arizona doesn't have as robust of a B Corp law as
Okay.
it does in
hmm
Colorado.
Mm.
And, I don't have a problem with that at
Yeah.
all.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
but our main thing is that we want to be held accountable for our social and environmental impact in addition to trying to be profitable.
Yeah. 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 Good for you guys. I don't know enough about that stuff yet to have some intelligent questions, but it's always fascinating to me. I was talking to Somebody else, we didn't talk up on the podcast about it, but just about the whole B Corp. And when you do the search, it's like, wow, that's surprising. I would think there would be more, but there's a handful. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. And so, what are some of the keys to growth and success that you guys have had?
One of the big things that we've been working in is that, Native people are 2% of the population, and that's in sort of looking at how do we make a sustainable business model. Like if we were just to serve our community, we would not be getting very far.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we really want to do is we want to create this common set of shared values and connections with communities that are different than our own, in large part because the lands which we recreate and which we enjoy, our public lands, have been stewarded by indigenous people for generations, and we believe there's an critical importance of building a shared story and shared understanding so that we can continue to share these, this amazing asset for generations to come. Mm-hmm. And so, our products tell a story. We do a lot of other storytelling. We've done some stuff. We just made a film called Welcome to Gwich'ya'ji about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and that was a partnership that we had with Patagonia and the the Wilderness Society. Mm-hmm. We're working with other larger brands and sort of bridging this gap between indigenous communities and the broader outdoor space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of the public lands it's protected park in a park or some way, but it's just, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but they're not, I don't know, they're not accessible. Are they too accessible? I don't know.
I mean, I think one of the ways that I always say that indigenous land management differs from the broader public or broader United States in our public land system is that all of our land management considered that people were going to be in those spaces constantly, mm-hmm. and that they were, I would say more, I don't want to say more akin to national forests, but it depends on where it is. But
yeah, because they're all different agencies touch them, right? It's the Forest Service, it's the BLM, it's the Park Service. They're all somehow connected to the bigger picture.
Yeah, and what we and one of the big differences between indigenous communities and non is that, well, I won't say all, but like one of the major things that I've noticed is this identity tied to the land. Mm-hmm. So like who you are and where you come from is literally the landscape. And,
right.
And an example of that is in Navajo, we have 4 clans that when we introduce ourselves, it's our name, it's our 4 clans, our family's name. Mm-hmm. But those clans tell what land you come from, like the landscape you come from, and the people you come from, and and sharing that story with folks that spend a lot of time outdoors, a lot of time doing things in the backcountry, whatever it may be, like the cultures are changing and people are feeling really connected with these landscapes, and we think that's an opportunity to build shared values and shared understanding.
Yeah, I would support that. We were in the Arctic with Steve Barker and a few folks on a trip up there. Beautiful landscape, and got to meet some Gwich'in people, and it was just it was just amazing. And what a fabulous experience, and you could really feel the connection that I think a lot of us don't have to the land. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and I
go ahead.
I think that's just an amazing opportunity to just build shared understanding and how do we address some of our environmental challenges together.
Yeah, right. And get connected back to the land, right? I mean, that's one of the missing pieces, I think. And so how can we continue to win the day for the environment through some of these activities and actions?
That's been kind of one of the pieces that we've been trying out a lot of different things. We're doing our part in just kind of reminding folks that the period in which we're in right now of looking at, the environmental challenges that we face are really, really only within the past 150 years.
Right.
And people have been living in these lands for thousands of years, 14,000. And it was because of their stewardship that we were able to continue enjoying these places today. And I think having that perspective of like, we can write this next chapter and in a way that addresses that is one way to do it. And the other piece is that I think is important to realize about indigenous people. Like we as Navajos, like we have stories about where we hyperextended our environment. We damaged our environment to the point where we had to leave. And so our understanding of why this is important is largely because of these previous experiences.
Been there. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like it's avoidable, and I think it's going to be something that we're, at the end of the day, we just have to work together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I forget I read about this concept in some book I was reading about indigenous peoples and the lands and whatnot, and it's about enough, right? I mean,
enoughness, yeah.
Enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Eons people are living on the lands, and they go and they hunt, and they get just enough to feed the clan, and they get use just enough space, or just enough. And somewhere along the line, this concept of more is it's what's killing us, I think. It's destroying the planet.
Right.
And I don't know how we get back to that enough. I just need this much. So I'll leave the rest of it for next time or for somebody else, but I'm only taking enough.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Yeah.
And one of the ways that I've been looking at how that happens is in like our outdoor rec experiences and the way we engage with the outdoors. Like, we might not be taking something like physical, but we're taking an experience. And I think there's a way in which we can engage with sort of more of a relationship of reciprocity. And so, one of the things that I do when I go backcountry skiing is I sock away a couple bucks every time I go out there so that I could give it to an organization that does advocacy for like Protect Our Winters.
Yep.
And so in a way, it's like I kind of hold myself accountable for that particular practice, because it's just it's this relationship of giving and taking.
Yeah.
So
replace what you take and don't take too much. Yeah, that's a good concept. Yeah. And how about winning the day for people? I mean, the people too are a huge component of this, right? How can we help people survive and live on, the original lands or wherever it might be?
Yeah, I mean, I would say check out the film that we made, The Welcome to Gwich'ya'ji, which is about Fort Yukon.
Okay.
And
we'll link to that in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that we did in that particular story was that we focused more on the story of the people and their connections to land, rather than like the stereotypical imagery of the Arctic refuge, and giving a deeper sense about why these landscapes are important to people and why they matter. And so that's I think in terms of what I've seen, just really excitingly happening in the outdoor space is just how do we tell sort of and give these platforms for different perspectives on engagement with the land. And I've done a couple pieces in the Alpinist, and that's been kind of a one way I've been engaging that. But I just I think people are hungry for it. I've seen that interest in that, and that gives me excitement. And I don't know how that continues or how that happens, but I think continuing to understand other people's perspectives and their lived experience, I think, is going to be how we get there.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think people are hungry for it. I think the consciousness has been raised significantly since I was a kid, for sure. And it seems to be we're more interested in learning and experiencing and sharing than we have been before. So that's steps in the right direction, possibly. Yeah. What's the best decision you've ever made?
I don't even know at this point.
Or maybe one of them that was really good.
I think finally listening to my mom. And
that's good.
I mean, I think taking her advice about sometimes what does she say? Long-term gain requires short-term pain.
That's good advice.
Like working towards these larger goals and bigger things might not have immediate reward, and it might be incredibly draining and stressful and tiring. But like if there's a kind of a clear goal where you're going, it's worth it in the end. That's
good. That's good advice. And who inspires you? Maybe now or over your career or lifetime?
It's been a lot of folks. I think. We made that film in Gwich'in country, and the folks that I was working with there, and the folks that were dedicated to continuing living their life off the land and imparting those teachings with their children, I felt was one of the most inspiring pieces
Yeah.
of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is, in the mountaineering community that I've worked with is just the folks that are working to, thread these stories of landscapes with those of people. One that comes to mind is Renan Ozturk. He's been doing a lot of cool work, and his wife Taylor Reese as well. Sanjay Rawal. I mean, these are folks that I've looked up to in the ways in which they do storytelling in an incredibly authentic and compelling way.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I agree. And do you guys partner with other nonprofit organizations? You must. You must work with quite a few, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah. So we do. So part of our B Corp giving is that we're part of 1% for the Planet, and so we've worked with the American Alpine Club, which I am a member of, or a board member of.
Okay.
The Access Fund we've done work with as well. We also have worked with a few native nonprofits that do work around outdoor access. So this is either through our time in, providing consultation or direct donations as well.
Oh, cool.
So we do that work there, and then we also work with like a number of folks in native communities looking to increase the outdoor industry, or to bring the outdoor industry to their communities in a culturally responsible way.
That's great. And what other outdoor activities do you participate in?
Oh, too
All
many.
of them?
I've since moving to Tucson, I've dabbled in climbing a little bit in Colorado here and there. I climbed a bunch of 14ers. But since moving here to Tucson, I've been doing more technical rock climbing, and
cool.
I've been really fortunate to have mentorship from one of our athletes. His name's Aaron Mike. He's 513D, 514A climber.
Wow.
Really strong native athlete, and so we've gone and done a couple projects. We did a piece for Climbing Magazine out here in Cochise Stronghold that'll be coming out in July. And then also another short piece for Red Bull TV on a peak down here as well that we climbed. That ended up being an 18-hour day, which was quite a long day in the saddle. But yeah, I've done that climbing, and then also doing ski mountaineering as well. I really like climbing mountains, but I'm not a big fan of walking down them.
Smart man.
So we just did a really cool project with Cody Townsend, who's a Solomon skier, and he's doing this project called the 50 Project, but it's the 50 greatest ski descents in North America, and that was done by folks like Chris Davenport years ago, and so he's recreating all of these. And so we did it a ski descent of one of the peaks in the La Salle mountain ranges right outside of Moab, which was phenomenal.
Oh, awesome. You got to get over here to Bishop and do some skiing back here.
Yeah, I was just talking to another guy that we did a little project with, Forrest Shearer, who's a Patagonia snowboarder. We did and he's going to be skiing and doing stuff out there, so I'm sure I'll be headed that way soon.
Good. It's perfect right now.
That's what I hear.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions or advice for folks wanting to get into the outdoor biz or grow their career outdoors or nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, I think, one of the pieces is that, I'm working in academia right now, but I'm seeing like how much I see the value in which education can provide in providing the skill sets and necessary tools for folks that want to engage in outdoor stuff. But what I've seen in my experience of education is that has not been the case, and it's not been presented as an option. And the sort of pathways and ways in which folks can engage in the outdoor space is not sort of created on the academic side. And I think that's something I want to engage in. But, because the prevailing notion within academia that I've been blowing up is it's just people playing outside. And, and I was like, it's so much, of course, that's an element of it. But then there's the component of, public health, connection to land, larger environmental stewardship. The people that spend time outdoors is where your environmental stewards come from. So I think looking at what training you can get in like sort of repurposing tools that you might get in higher education to serve that, to serve those roles of playing outside is trying to think of how can these tools be used differently than what I'm being taught to use them for.
Well, and I think too, as the outdoor industry continues to grow and get more sophisticated and larger, there's a need for people with those tools and skills than we didn't have 20 years ago, right? I mean, even the brands we all of a sudden need all these super wicked smart engineers and guys that know about analytics, and I don't even know what the terminology is, but it's just it's beyond my limited scope. But there's a much stronger need for some of those tools that you get in higher academia. So hopefully that transforms. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Do you have any daily routines you use to keep your sanity? Meditate, exercise, walk the dog, all of the above?
Yeah. The daily poop walk with the dogs keeps me.
There's so many people that do that too. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, I do that, and then I'm sure to like every other day, I try to make it up to the mountain and do stuff. I mean, with traveling so much, one of the things is I was just really getting the habit of keeping things nice and orderly, because traveling quite a bit, it's quite easy for things to come.
Yeah, it goes off the rails fast.
Yeah,
yeah.
I would say that, and just getting enough sleep. I actually I have no problem sleeping in late as long as I get enough sleep, because it just makes the rest of the day so much more enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I started a morning and evening routine about 2.5 years ago, and it was around this need for X amount of sleep, and it's helped my productivity so much. It's huge. Yeah. Do you have any favorite books or books you give as gifts?
Ooh, I've been reading. There's one called Dispossessing the Wilderness that I was reading, just kind of looking at some of the indigenous history of the creation of the public land system, which I think was, it was learning for me. It's actually a person's dissertation, but.
So as you saying, it's a little dry, but
no, it's actually not. I mean, compared to dissertations, it's not too bad.
Okay. It sounds interesting. I want to look it up and grab it.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, a lot of academic writing can be very dry and hard to
I wouldn't
access.
suggest anybody read my master's thesis, but
that's been one. And then I've been a real big fan of reading The Alpinist. It's been really interesting writing and just getting to know mountains and people and the history of them. I think the mountains really intrigue me as a Navajo, because we have our whole worldview and religious beliefs are based upon 4 sacred mountains. And so, understanding the relationships that people have with mountains in different cultural contexts is always I find just fascinating.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. How about your favorite piece of outdoor gear sorry, let me rephrase that. How about your favorite piece of outdoor gear under $100?
I'll make a plug for our company, but
cool.
we have a few new shirts coming out that are made from ring spun organic cotton from a company in North Carolina. You can actually track the entire supply chain based upon the color of the thread on the bottom of the shirt and one of the sleeves. But it's been great. We're using a screen printing technique that basically physically adheres a dye to the fabric, and it's not melting PVC plastic. So it's an incredibly sustainable shirt, but it's still breathable. Unlike, most screen printed shirts feel like you just have a sticker on the front of it. So
yeah, well, cool. We'll link to that in the show notes.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. And is there anything you'd like to say or ask of our listeners as we wrap up here?
I always say it's just, if you're going out having fun somewhere, just, be sure to learn about the people that were doing that hundreds, if not thousands of years before you.
Great
Add some depth to the experience.
I love it. Yep. And where can people find you if they want to follow up? Email, LinkedIn? What's the best spot?
LinkedIn's great. I have a pretty poppin' Instagram too.
Okay. Yeah.
And then also just our work at natives-outdoors.org. We do stuff there as well.
Okay, cool. I'll link to all that stuff in the show notes too. Yeah, and then we'll plug you guys on the socials when the episode goes live. Well, it's been great catching up with you. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Rick.
Yeah, look forward to meeting you at OR.
Yeah, same.
All right, sounds good. Take it easy.
Yeah, take it easy.
Bye. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz podcast, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to go to theoutdoorbizpodcast.com where you find all the episodes, show notes, and much, much more. Until next time, be sure to make time to get outside.